Hi, I'm Lumen, and I showed up to a family yacht party I paid for, only to be told there wasn't enough space for me. I wasn't invited. But the guest list? 118 people, including my sister's yoga teacher. Worse than being excluded was realizing I'd helped fund the whole thing, and no one even said thank you. They didn't forget me. They erased me, quietly, deliberately. Ever wonder what happens when the quiet one finally speaks? Stay with me. It gets colder than you think. The rain had started sometime around dawn, soft and steady, brushing against the windowpane like it had something to say. I stood by the kitchen sink, watching the clouds cast their dull reflection over the street below, my hands wrapped around a lukewarm mug of peppermint tea. The silence in my apartment was familiar, comfortable even, but today it felt sharper, more deliberate, as if the quiet were waiting for something. My phone buzzed on the counter. A message from Seraphine in the family group chat. Dad's big 70th bash is shaping up nicely. You guys won't believe the yacht. No details, no RSVP, just a flex, wrapped in a smiley face emoji. I stared at it for a moment, thumb hovering over the keyboard, then opened a separate thread with Mom. Should I be planning for it? Should I fly in? I typed, then hit send before I could overthink it. The three dots danced for a second, then, it's mostly just core guests this time. Not enough space, sweetie. I reread her words twice. Core guests. Not enough space. I set the phone down gently, took another sip of my tea, and stared at the tiny crack on the backsplash tile I still hadn't fixed. Then I opened my laptop. Years ago, I used to design everything for these events. Menus, invitations, even mood boards. Seraphine once called me the unpaid event fairy. I wore that badge with pride back then, as if making myself useful was the best way to stay seen. I typed Wexler Party into my search bar. The first hit was my cousin Amy's Facebook post, a pastel-toned announcement featuring palm leaves, cursive gold font, and, God help me, a blurry photo of the yacht pulled from Google Images. They'd used a Canva template, misspelled Seraphine's husband's name. It was like being replaced by someone who didn't even care about the role they took. Not just excluded, swapped out for convenience. I closed the laptop. The mug was cold now. By mid-morning, the rain had turned into a mist, thin and clingy. I slipped on a coat, grabbed my bag, and walked to the cafe around the corner. The familiar jingle of the bell overhead greeted me as I stepped inside, nodding at the barista I vaguely knew. I ordered a black coffee, no milk, no sugar. I didn't want comfort, I wanted clarity. At the window seat, I watched people pass by with dogs, strollers, umbrellas. Across the room, a woman and her daughter giggled over a shared muffin, their heads bent close. The kind of moment you don't realize you're mourning until it's gone. A memory surfaced, uninvited. Dad, years ago, standing in the garage surrounded by half-assembled folding chairs, telling me, "Sometimes you've got to make space for what's important, Lumen." At the time, he'd been talking about storage. Now I wondered if that philosophy had shaped more than just our closets. When I got home, the light had shifted. Evening settled in quietly, the apartment dim but still. I changed into sweatpants, tossed my coat onto the chair, and opened the folder labeled Events Archive on my desktop. There they were, years of my work. Custom typography, hand-drawn icons, color palettes meticulously matched to table linens. I clicked through each one like flipping through an old photo album. Each design had a theme, not just visual, emotional. Togetherness, legacy, roots. One even said, "Room for all," in bold script on the header. I'd built those with hope, with heart, and not a single one had space for me anymore. I stared at the folder for a long moment, then dragged it toward the trash icon. My finger hovered. Then I did it. The shortcut disappeared from my desktop like it had never existed. And just like that, the space I'd made for everyone else finally emptied. For me. I didn't plan to look. I really didn't. It was past 9, and I'd been trying to read, The kind of book you pick up when your brain won't settle, but you need to feel productive. My tea had gone cold on the nightstand again. When I reached for my phone to set an alarm, muscle memory took over. A tap, a swipe, and suddenly I was on Instagram. The story autoplayed without sound. Amy's post, of course. She was always the first to document anything remotely extravagant. I saw ocean, champagne flutes, linen shirts billowing in the wind. Then the drone shot started. There they all were, on the upper deck of a yacht so clean it looked photoshopped. Family, friends, even the in-laws, all in coordinated white, like they were filming a lifestyle ad. My mother and father stood at the center. Seraphine beamed next to them, kids flanking her like accessories. I spotted Levi with his wife. Even my cousin's ex-boyfriend was there. They all looked curated. The hashtag in the corner read, Woo, Wexler Legacy Cruise, with a sparkle emoji. My hand didn't move. Not at first. I just sat there, staring. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I was waiting to see my own face. I scanned the edges, looked for someone waving, maybe a blur I could pretend was me. I wasn't there. It wasn't even a question. There was no empty space where I might have stood, no digital blur, no hint of erasure. It was as if I had never existed in that part of the family to begin with. My chest tightened in a way I hadn't felt since I was a teenager. Not fear, not sadness. Something quieter, a sort of ghost pain, like remembering a room that no longer has a door. The next part was predictable, but I did it anyway. I opened my inbox. Nothing, no invite, no calendar hold. I searched my email for Wexler Cruise. 0 results. Then, I went to the family website, something Seraphine had built years ago to manage birthdays and holidays. At the bottom of the homepage, a banner flashed, Special thanks to our legacy investors. I clicked it. Gold borders. Fancy script. A long list of names sorted by contribution level. And mine wasn't there. I scrolled twice to be sure. Nothing, not even my initials. 2 years ago, I wired $27 to help buy the family stake in that very yacht. It was my way of finally belonging, after years of floating on the outside. But the list showed Seraphine's husband, and Gideon's brother. Even a family friend I barely knew made the list. I stared until the screen blurred. Then I closed the tab. Back in bed, the silence returned. Heavier now. I stared at the ceiling. Thought about the year they forgot to mention my graduation. The holiday dinner, where I was asked to take the group photo, so I wouldn't be in it. It wasn't just forgetfulness. Not anymore. When people erase you that completely, it's not an accident. It's choreography. A practiced, deliberate decision. Someone had to open a spreadsheet, see my name, and choose to leave it out. That's not absence. That's rejection with a smile. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because crying would have made it feel more personal, more intimate. But this wasn't intimate. This was cold, bureaucratic, sanitized. I took a screenshot of the drone photo and saved it in a new folder on my desktop. I named it, Truths I Can't Unsee. That's when it stopped being a family retreat. It became a reality check. The morning light bled gently across the floorboards, gray and hesitant, as if Portland itself were holding its breath. I sat on the edge of my bed, still in the clothes I'd worn yesterday, the stiffness of my jeans a reminder that I hadn't moved much through the night. Sleep hadn't come. Not really. A few shallow dreams maybe, but nothing that rested me. The laptop was already open on the dining table. I hadn't shut it after saving the screenshot. I patted across the room in my socks and clicked the trackpad. The screen flared back to life. My desktop suddenly foreign. I opened the folder marked Family Things. It started as a place to collect ideas, party themes, color swatches, drafts of speeches. The first file was from Seraphine's engagement dinner. I'd coordinated the playlist, printed custom napkin rings, even photoshopped a fake magazine cover with their faces and the caption, Perfect Match. Click. The next one, Mom's 60th. I'd organized a photo wall of every decade she'd lived through, created a timeline banner with milestones. Half of it had been my own research. She'd smiled when she saw it, hugged me, said, "You always remember the little things." Then came the retreat folder, one they held 4 years ago. I found a Word doc titled Schedule LH. The file opened to a minute-by-minute breakdown of meals, yoga, trivia, kid-friendly crafts. I'd formatted it down to the fonts. A footnote reminded them to consider vegetarian options. No one ever used it. Not even a thanks, but we went with something else. They just went around it. I closed the document. A sour taste formed at the back of my throat. Not disgust. Something heavier. Something closer to knowing. I sat back in my chair, staring through the screen like it might give me an answer I hadn't already learned. It wasn't always this way. Or maybe it was, and I was just too eager to believe otherwise. When you want to be part of something badly enough, you convince yourself you're not being left out, just running late to the invitation. But the evidence was everywhere now. My birthday 3 years ago. I hadn't remembered it until just then. It had fallen on the same weekend as Seraphine's baby shower. The family flew in, booked a fancy brunch, posted matching pink outfits. I'd received a generic gift card in the mail. No name on the envelope, no note inside. The receipt was still tucked into the fold. That night, I bought a cupcake from the grocery store, stuck a match in the middle, and sang to myself. No one called. I brushed the memory aside back then. Told myself people get busy. That motherhood trumped sibling birthdays. That maybe I hadn't reminded them. But today, I didn't make excuses. I gathered them instead. Like a detective in a case no one else believed was worth solving. I listed them aloud, quietly. The engagement invite I made but wasn't named on. The holiday slideshow where my photos weren't included. The group text where I was added after the plan was made. The cousin's wedding where I was seated at the vendor table. The dots connected themselves. They always had. I just hadn't wanted to draw the lines. They don't forget me. They choose not to see me. I picked up my journal and flipped past pages of half-hearted affirmations and grocery lists. The pen in my hand felt heavier than usual, not because of weight, but because of what it was about to put down. Erasure is a strategy. I paused. So is survival. That's when I stopped asking what I'd done wrong and started wondering what they were afraid of seeing in me. I didn't write a plan, not yet. But I began listing truths. Not to weaponize, just to remember who I was before they edited me out. The street outside was quiet enough that I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. I sat at the kitchen table, barefoot, staring at the document on my laptop. I'd pulled up the wire transfer receipt without even thinking. It was right there. $27,000 sent to the Wexler Family Trust. Memo. Yacht investment. I remembered the conversation with Dad. We'd been in the backyard, him fiddling with the grill even though it was already cleaned. He'd looked over his shoulder and said, "You putting that in? That'll mean something. You'll be part of this long-term, legacy stuff." Legacy. That word felt so loaded now, like it had an expiration date, and mine had already passed. I leaned back in the chair, legs crossed under me, the laptop screen still glowing. I'd contributed almost as much as Seraphine and her husband combined. I wasn't looking for applause, just acknowledgement, a line of text, a name. I opened my messages and scrolled to Mom's thread. My thumbs hovered, then typed, "Hey! Just curious. Why wasn't my name on the contributors list for the yacht?" 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then returned. A moment later, her reply popped up. "Oh, sweetie, there were too many names to fit. We had to consolidate families." That word again. Consolidate. Like I was an extra file in a messy drawer. I read it once, then again, 5 times. It didn't get softer. She'd folded me into an invisible category. I wasn't Lumen, the adult daughter who contributed real money. I was part of a vague family blob, unnamed, unseen, budgeted out of the narrative. I didn't respond. There wasn't anything worth saying, not in that moment. I closed the message and, out of sheer masochism, Opened the event photo gallery again. It had been updated. New photos had been added. Candid ones. A champagne toast. Kids in matching polos. A shot of the cake shaped like the yacht. I swiped slowly, pausing on a photo of Vera and Raymond with a caption, "Founders of the Legacy." It was all very polished. Seraphine's husband was tagged. So was my cousin's yoga instructor. Even Levi's college roommate made the cut. I looked through every photo. My name didn't appear once, not even as a tag on someone else's shoulder. I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred. This wasn't a clerical error. This wasn't someone forgetting a tag. This was systemic. Planned. A group decision dressed up as coincidence. You don't forget someone at this scale unless forgetting them serves a purpose. I got up, poured the rest of my cold tea down the sink, and opened a blank document. The cursor blinked like it was waiting to see which version of me would show up. At the top, I typed, "Relocation of Silent Capital." I didn't write with rage, not with bitterness. I wrote with precision. Bullet points, dates, wire reference numbers, legal phrasing I'd learned from drafting client memos over the years. This wasn't a tantrum. It was a receipt. I stopped halfway through and looked out the window. The apartment complex across the street had a flickering porch light. I watched it stutter in the dark. Then I turned back to the document and typed the last line. Not enough space? Fine. Let's make some room. The sky was a sharp, clean blue when I stepped out of the car. I hadn't told anyone I was coming. Not because I was trying to make a scene, but because I knew there was no other way to be present without being labeled dramatic. The marina stretched wide and white ahead of me, sunlight bouncing off the water, like it had something to prove. Linen dress staff moved like clockwork, carrying silver trays of fruit skewers and setting down bouquets that didn't know how temporary they were. I stood for a moment by the entrance, watching the choreography. Everyone in white, just like in the photos. Laughter floated up from the dock, light and detached. It didn't belong to me. In one hand, I held a small white gift bag. Inside, a bottle of Dad's favorite scotch, rare, limited edition, handwritten label. In the other, a long box tied with navy ribbon. Flowers, peonies and thistle, like the ones Mom had in her wedding bouquet. I didn't plan to stay. I just wanted to hand them over. That was it. I stepped onto the dock. Before I could even reach the first set of steps, Vera appeared. She didn't walk. She swept. Her heels barely made a sound, but her face was set like porcelain. Cold. Fragile in that brittle way that breaks everything around it first. "Lumen," she said, voice tight, like my name was a thread she didn't want to pull. "What are you doing here?" I held up the gift bag. "Just dropping this off." Her eyes dropped to it and then back to me. "I told you there wasn't enough space." Guests nearby had paused, drinks halfway to their lips. I could feel the silence build, like fog that refused to lift. "I'm not here to stay," I said evenly, "just to acknowledge." Vera took a half step closer. "Why are you doing this?" I could have said a lot. I could have laid out the wire transfer record, the missing name, the consolidated contributors list. Instead, I placed the gift bag carefully on a side table near the entrance, then set the flower box next to it. I didn't say another word, and then I turned around and walked away. By the time I reached the hotel, the afternoon heat had started to fade. I didn't take off my shoes. I just collapsed into the chair by the window and stared. An hour later, the concierge knocked softly. "Delivery for Miss Hartley." I opened the door to find the same navy ribbon, the flower box. The gift bag was missing, but the blooms I'd handpicked had returned, bruised around the edges. The envelope with my handwritten card? Gone. In its place, a note from the event coordinator. Recipient refused delivery. I set the box on the balcony table. It sat like an apology that hadn't even tried to pretend. Over the next few hours, the petals began to fall one by one, a slow undoing. There were no tears, only a strange, aching clarity that settled in my stomach and spread upward. I walked back inside, opened my laptop, and clicked on the draft I'd been working on. Reallocation of silent capital. I scrolled to the bottom and added a new line. Due to formal and public exclusion, the undersigned requests full revocation of contributed funds. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was necessary. I clicked save. Then I scheduled the email to send at 8 a.m. sharp, and I slept. At 8:03 a.m., my phone vibrated once on the nightstand, then again, and again. By the 8th buzz, I didn't even bother to look. I already knew what had detonated. Lying still, I listened to the sound of water running in the bathroom above me, the faint hum of traffic outside, the occasional gull's call echoing through the early Newport morning. I sat up slowly, reached for the phone, and saw it. Delivered. The subject line on the email was simple. Notice of withdrawal, silent capital clause. It was the quietest warhead I'd ever launched. I set the phone down. Let it sit. Let the silence expand. 10 minutes passed, maybe 15. Then the screen lit up again. First came Seraphine. Her message was as polished as her public-facing smile. Lumen, I don't know what you're trying to prove, but this is completely inappropriate. Dad hasn't even seen this yet. Then a voicemail from Raymond. He didn't say my name until halfway through the recording. You're making a scene, he said, like he was reporting bad weather. Let's talk this through. This isn't how families handle things. Vera's response came by email. 2 words. Received, noted. I could practically hear her fingernails tapping the table while typing that. I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I opened a new folder on my phone and began dragging their messages into it. Screenshots, timestamps, nothing dramatic, just documentation. I felt no rush, no glee. What I felt, honestly, was the strangest relief, like I'd stepped out of a coat I didn't remember putting on. One that had grown heavier with every family dinner, every group photo cropped at my shoulder. My friend Ren once told me, if you're going to pull a pin, make damn sure it's the right grenade. That morning, it didn't feel like an explosion. It felt like opening a window. By 10:30, my phone had quieted again. For a while, I thought maybe that would be it. Then at 11:02, it rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Lumen? A hesitant voice said. It's Erica. Erica was technically a cousin, but more accurately, a +1 to family holidays, who married into our branch of the tree and had never really known where to sit. Hey, I said, unsure of her reason for calling. I heard about the email and the money. I waited. I didn't know it was you who helped fund the yacht. I don't think anyone told us, but it makes sense now, and I wanted to say, I saw what you did, and I get it. I blinked. You do? I asked, more surprised by the sincerity than the content. I've been the just in this family too long, she said. Just the wife, just the support, just quiet. And you, what you wrote? That hit hard. Anyway, good for you. Before I could respond, she added, if anyone asks, I didn't call. And then she hung up. I stared at the screen. Another message came in, this time from my Aunt Pam, a woman who'd once told me I was too logical to be artistic. Her text was 3 lines long. I saw what you sent. You've always had a backbone. It's about time someone else noticed. I didn't reply to that one either. I just smiled. That afternoon, I took a walk down toward the beach, left my phone on silent, let the sand pull at my sandals and the breeze pull at everything I didn't need to carry anymore. The world hadn't ended, but something inside me had finally started. I walked the shoreline that morning, shoes in one hand, the water brushing at my ankles, with a rhythm I could finally match. The sun was higher now, crisp and unforgiving. My phone, tucked inside my tote bag, buzzed like it had something urgent to say. I let it buzz. Eventually, curiosity won. I stopped at a bench facing the marina and pulled it out. 7 unread messages. The first one was from Levi. Mom's upset. You could have handled this differently. Then from Seraphine, why air this stuff now? You've always been so private. This just seems calculated. And then Raymond, please think before embarrassing us further. This is still a family. Still a family. That phrase clung to the inside of my skull like wet lint. Since when does telling the truth feel like treason? When does drawing a boundary become a declaration of war? Apparently, the moment it challenges a narrative, someone's worked too hard to stage. I opened Instagram. Vera had posted a black and white photo from a Christmas party 5 years ago. It was one of those soft focus shots, taken right after someone's second glass of wine, people glowing in half-light, all toothy smiles and relaxed shoulders. I wasn't in the photo. The caption read, "Some people walk away from love because it's easier than showing up." The comments flooded in like clockwork. So true. You deserve better. Families always have one who can't handle real love. She hadn't tagged me. She didn't need to. It was a message dressed as a memory. And everyone clapped. I took a screenshot, saved it, closed the app. There was nothing to say that wouldn't get turned inside out. Vera was playing the long game, moral authority via aesthetic curation, soft filters and wounded captions. She was constructing a version of events that made her look like the grieving matriarch abandoned by her difficult daughter. I, on the other hand, had kept quiet. And when I did speak, I did so privately, through legal channels, not in public posts. But now, silence looked like guilt. And hers? Hers looked like grace. I leaned back against the bench, staring out at the boats swaying in their slips. This wasn't about being absent. It was about not fitting the image they wanted to project. They didn't want family. They wanted a family brand, smiles and frames, birthdays with banners. And I'd never learned how to match the color palette. I opened my notes app, typed one line, "Public image is not family." I stared at the sentence until it no longer needed revision. Then I closed the phone, stood, and walked away from the water. I didn't look back. She breathes out, lets go of the need to be seen by people who only value visibility on their terms. My phone buzzed against the nightstand as I tied back my hair, still barefoot in the kitchen. A new message previewed on the screen. Your email was printed out. No greeting, just that. It was from my cousin Jordan, blunt by nature, disinterested in drama, which made the text land twice as hard. I opened our group thread and stared at the photo he'd attached. Gideon stood at the head of Vera's dining table, holding a printed copy of my email. He wasn't reading it from his phone or paraphrasing it over wine. He was literally reading my words, sentence by sentence, to an audience of bloodlines and table settings. The caption read, "Well, she finally said it." I zoomed in. People's expressions were a mix of discomfort and performance. No one interrupted him. That part surprised me. I always thought Seraphine would be the first to throw her napkin down. Instead, according to Jordan's follow-up message, she tried to reroute the room right after he finished page 1. Something about protecting the family's image and being mindful of what gets said in digital spaces. But Gideon didn't stop. He read every word, even the line about silent capital not equaling silent worth. By the time he finished, the room had gone still. Raymond, I was told, got up and left before dessert. Vera, always the last to leave a table, apparently excused herself mid-sentence and didn't return. I read the message 3 times before locking the screen. Minutes later, another ping. This time from Aunt Milas. She rarely texted. Her message simply said, "I remember when Lumen made the whole retreat schedule by hand, and nobody thanked her." Then, attached beneath that sentence, was a photo I hadn't seen in years. Me at 25, hair pulled back, clipboard in hand, standing behind a buffet table while kids in face paint ran past. I wasn't smiling. I wasn't posing. I wasn't meant to be in the frame at all. But there I was. No one in the group responded. Not a single emoji. Not a single heart. but I saved that photo to my phone. I didn't need their applause. I needed evidence for myself that I had been there, that I had built something once, even if no one remembered touching it. I walked to the balcony, letting the breeze hit my face. The ocean below sounded indifferent, like it always did. I liked that about it. Water didn't perform, it just existed. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt clean, like a window had finally shattered after years of pretending it was a wall. "When the curtain tears," I whispered aloud, "you don't yell, you just stop pretending it was a window." That's when the final message came in. From Vera. 3 words. "We need to talk." Followed by another. "In person." I got to the cafe early, half by design, half by instinct. It was one of those quiet spots tucked against the coast, with just enough hum to drown out thought, but not enough to lose yourself in. A place where people came to forgive, or pretend to. I picked a table near the window, 2 chairs, one clearly waiting. The waitress brought my coffee, and I thanked her softly, barely looking up. I didn't need caffeine. I needed a place to sit where I could be seen not unraveling. I stared at the waves and remembered something Mom used to say, usually when one of us embarrassed her in public. "We don't air dirty laundry where people eat, Lumen." The phrase came back now, not like a warning, but a joke with the edge worn off. I sipped. Bitter. No sugar. She arrived exactly on time. Of course she did. Vera wore a cream-colored blazer and pearl studs. Her lipstick matched her nails, calculated crimson. She didn't sit immediately. She surveyed the room first, scanning for an audience she could pretend wasn't there. When she finally joined me, she didn't bother with a hello. "You blindsided us," she said, her voice low and controlled. I didn't speak. I waited. "You know your siblings have reputations to protect. What you did was hurtful." She said it like I'd slashed tires or outed someone's secret affair. Still no apology, not even the courtesy of a regret-shaped sentence. I let her finish her litany of grievances, nodding once when she paused, more out of habit than respect. My silence, as always, was her cue to keep going. Then came the real strike. She adjusted her napkin and said, like she was offering a casual insight, "Seraphine told me something, and I think it's worth repeating." I already knew it was going to sting. She said you've always been the backup, dependable, but replaceable. The word hung between us like smoke. Backup, not partner, not contributor, not sister, just filler. And yet, in that moment, I didn't flinch. I felt something inside shift, not crack, not break, but slide into clarity, like a lens being wiped clean. The truth was, I had been the backup, the one who held the camera, carried the extras, filled the seats at tables when no one else could make it. They'd praised me when it suited them, overlooked me when it didn't, but I had never been disposable. I folded my napkin and placed it gently beside my cup. "This conversation," I said finally, "was never about repair. It's always been about control." Vera didn't argue. She didn't even blink. She just watched me stand, as if unsure whether to stop me or let me go. The bell above the cafe door gave a soft chime as I pushed it open. I didn't look back. It was close to midnight, and I was still wide awake. The hotel room around me was quiet, save for the occasional creak from the hallway or the dull hum of the minibar fridge. I was scrolling through emails, not because I expected anything useful, but because the habit was calming, a sort of ritual. Most were spam or unread newsletters I'd forgotten to unsubscribe from. Then, in the middle of the cluttered inbox, I saw the subject line, "Hey, it's long overdue." My thumb hesitated. It was from Levi. Levi never picked sides. He never raised his voice, never reacted. He floated just above conflict, like a helium balloon. Visible, vaguely attached, but always untouchable. So, to see his name here, now, sent a slow pulse through my chest. I opened it. Lumen. I've been sitting with this for a while. Not proud of that, just stating it plainly. You probably remember that time I asked you for a loan. 10 grand, for the studio remodel. At the time, I told Mom and Dad that I'd worked out a personal deal. I didn't tell them it came from you, and then I didn't correct them when they started talking like it came from them. Because it was easier that way. You didn't make a fuss. You never do. That made it even easier to let the story go unchallenged. But I know what I did. And when I saw your email the other day, I realized I owe you more than the money. I owe you the truth. And I'm sorry it took me this long to say it. I read it once, then again. Each time, the same parts stung in different places. I didn't feel rage, not even resentment. Just a hollow ache that someone, finally, saw the damage done. By omission more than action. I opened a new tab and typed in the event website. The retreat was still listed. The Our Supporters section was still live. Still no mention of my name. Seraphine's husband was there. So was Gideon's sister, who donated candles to a silent auction. Even the caterer had a gold border around her name, but not me. I stared at it for a long moment. I wasn't angry at Levi for his silence back then. I was angry at myself for not recognizing that silence was the most convenient form of complicity. The people I helped most had benefited longest from my quiet. I closed the laptop and sat in the dim light of the room, listening to the air conditioner switch on. Then I opened a reply draft. My fingers hovered for a while before typing, "Thank you." That might be the most honest thing I've read in years. I didn't hit send. Instead, I saved it to drafts, reread his email one more time, and set a reminder on my phone. Block of time to remember I matter. Even if no one else writes it down. 2 mornings after the retreat ended, I sat by the window in my Portland apartment, the one with the crooked latch and the view of the bakery across the street. The fog hadn't lifted yet. Neither had the weight in my chest. I wasn't waiting for a message, but when my phone lit up, I looked anyway. It was from Sable. No greeting, no explanation. Just a screenshot from Seraphine's Instagram story. The photo was filtered, as always. A brunch table mid-laugh, clinking glasses, white napkins folded just so. But it was the caption that pulled me under. Not all family looks like the one you're born into. It was the kind of line people repost without blinking. Vague enough to seem wise, pointed enough to land where intended. But it wasn't the caption that got me. It was the comments. A few were direct quotes from something I'd written years ago. Just because someone plants the seed doesn't mean they know how to grow the tree. Sometimes the person who holds the family together is the one no one notices until she's gone. My words, lines from a blog post I'd published under my name, then taken down after Seraphine read it aloud at a dinner party, laughing into her wine. "Sounds like someone watched too much Oprah," she'd said, and the room had cracked up like it wasn't about me. Now those words were being recycled, relabeled, fed back into the family narrative with a different author behind them. I didn't comment. I didn't text her. Instead, I opened the original file on my laptop, on being the invisible pillar. I read it slowly, as if I were editing someone else's story. I hadn't touched it in 4 years. The lines were raw, unpolished, but they were mine. My phone rang a little after noon. Sable's name lit up the screen. I answered before the second ring. "I saw it," she said. No small talk, no pleasantries. She didn't even paraphrase. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "She doesn't even remember it's mine," I said quietly. "She does," Sable replied. "That's why she used it." We sat in silence for a few seconds, letting the truth settle. Then she added, "You don't have to be at the table to set it on fire." I smiled. A real one this time. We talked for a while, about how absence carves out space, about how letting go doesn't mean you disappear. It means you change shape. "You don't need their mirror to see yourself anymore," she told me. "You've already built one." When we hung up, I didn't feel triumphant, just anchored. I pulled my journal from the drawer, the one with the leather spine and bent corners, opened to a clean page and wrote, "Even uninvited voices carry farther." Then I set the pen down. closed the cover, and walked to the bathroom mirror. For the first time, I didn't check for flaws. I didn't straighten my hair or pull at my clothes. I just looked and smiled. Not to be seen, but to be. The coffee was too strong, and the mug chipped at the lip, but I kept drinking it anyway. Habit, maybe. Or just the comfort of something flawed that still worked. I sat by the kitchen window, scrolling Zillow on my phone, not looking for anything in particular, just tracing shapes in other people's lives. That's when I saw it. The house. My parents' place. The one with the slate roof and blue hydrangeas Vera insisted on pruning herself. Listed as recently sold. No fanfare, no announcement, no forwarded address. Just gone. No text from Seraphine. No email chain about downsizing or new beginnings. Just a digital goodbye, dressed in real estate language. I stared at the screen for a moment longer, then locked my phone and set it face down. When people don't say goodbye, it means they think they're still right. Later that morning, I opened a few old group chats. One had been renamed Cousins Plus Summer 2019, and then quietly deleted. Another hadn't had a message in weeks. Only Jordan had posted anything recently, a meme about letting go of toxic patterns in Comic Sans, which somehow made it more absurd. I didn't feel bitter, not anymore. I just noticed the symmetry of the silence. I spent the afternoon editing the next episode of my podcast. I hadn't titled it until now. The screen blinked as I typed, "The cost of being the quiet one." I spoke calmly into the mic, the way you do when a wound has already closed, but the scar still itches. I told my story, not to accuse, but to make space, for anyone else who'd ever been erased while setting the table. I ended with, "If you've ever had to shrink to survive, know this. You're not invisible. You're intact." I clicked stop, uploaded the file, and closed the laptop. The sun was starting to lower itself behind the rooftops, stretching gold across the sidewalk. I grabbed my coat and walked into the neighborhood without checking the weather. A block down, a young couple was taking a group photo in front of a magnolia tree. 3 kids in matching jackets laughed around them, one holding a balloon that had already started to deflate. The mother tried to fix her hair. The father counted, 1, 2, smile. They didn't notice me watching, and I didn't need them to. I turned the corner, took the long way home. I was never meant to fit in their frame. I was meant to frame my own. Sometimes, we don't get the apology we deserved. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most walk away without ever turning back. But that doesn't mean we stay behind. If there's one thing I've learned through this story, it's this. Being excluded doesn't make you lesser. It makes space for something greater, if you choose to fill it. You don't need their frame to define your worth. You get to build your own. And no, that doesn't come with confetti or a public thank you. It comes with quiet moments, honest boundaries, and learning that peace doesn't require permission. If you've ever been called too sensitive, too much, or worse, forgettable, I want you to hear this from someone who lived it. You are not a placeholder. You are not a backup. You are the center of your own story, and it's never too late to rewrite the ending. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family or community? What helped you find your voice again? Drop a comment. If this story resonated with you, type 1 in the chat, or tell me where you're watching from. And if it didn't hit home, I still want to know why. I'm here to listen. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to the channel so you won't miss the next one. We've got more stories that speak to the quiet strength in all of us. Thanks for watching and for seeing me.